Chapter 1. Success by Any Means, 2063. Bobby blanched in disgust at the stinking grey husk writhing in pain on the table, a swell of pity growing in his heart as its moans grew louder with each passing moment. "That's enough," said Michael, his eyes never leaving the thing on the gurney. "Terminate this one and bring in the next subject." At his order, the medical personnel that had been fighting to keep the thing alive backed away from the table, allowing a pair of men dressed in white to remove the body while they waited for another. "Exactly what are we trying to do here?" Bobby asked, glancing up at his former friend, searching his handsome face for any trace of humanity left in him, wondering if he was even human. Looking around the room, he opened his odd sense, that uncanny itch that was always there. Immediately, he could tell one of the nurses working on the husk was pregnant, and the other, the older lady with greying hair, was in the early stages of breast cancer, the mass slowly growing in her chest. But from Michael, there was nothing, like he didn't exist. He was simply a blank space. Michael snorted, giving him a half-smile that never touched his eyes. Progress, understanding, and hopefully the chance to rebuild after your whore, Elizabeth, betrayed us. Bobby sucked in a sharp breath through his teeth, his stomach roiling as if he'd been punched. "She was a good person," he said, his cheeks burning. "She was just misguided." "Well, her misguided stupidity cost her life and the lives of our entire roster of Ascended. We've lost our chance of restoring this country to its former glory," said Michael. "If you would have done your job properly and brought her and the rest of the team to heel, we wouldn't be so vulnerable." Pressing his lips together, Bobby chewed back his words. "You know it wasn't like that, Michael." "For the last time, it's Bishop Washington," he growled. Bobby ground his teeth, giving Michael a challenging glare. "And not so long ago you were just Michael, my friend. Someone who wouldn't stand by idly torturing people in the name of progress and understanding. The Michael Washington I knew would never treat his friends this way or call one of them a whore. For God's sake, she was your friend too." Michael turned to face him, a flicker of rage smouldering in his dark eyes. "It's because of our past that I'm going to allow this little outburst," he said, placing a heavy hand on the side Bobby's face, his finger casually stroking the scar tissue just behind his ear where his control implant sat. "I need you to understand, Robert, that the time for childish things has passed. Dark days are coming and we must be ready. I need you to put aside your petty feelings and be a man, not some child pining for a love lost." Brushing away Michael's hand, Bobby swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. He would never forget Elizabeth. She was the voice in his head now, and her memory was the only thing holding back the worst parts of himself. "Whatever you say, I'll do my best," he said, keeping his tone in check. "Good," Michael answered, dismissing the subject of Elizabeth with an indifferent wave of his hand and turning his attention back to the medical staff waiting for another subject. Tapping his foot, he cocked his head. "I think I need you to observe the process from the start. Maybe you can catch something that we're missing." Michael turned on his heel without another word, motioning for Bobby to follow. Bobby found himself in the long, brightly lit corridor that housed the tall cylinders used for the subjects. Dozens of them lined the walls facing one another, taller than a man, with a large screen off to the side of each machine, their metallic surfaces polished to a dull shine. He followed slowly behind Michael and the newly promoted Reverend Carmichael, the greasy-haired assistant who was nominally in charge of maintaining the pods. Moving past each of the tubes, Bobby could feel a great deal about the young men and women being transformed, his odd sense, the itch in his brain telling him as much as, if not more than, the screens showing their vitals. "He's in pain," he said, suddenly stopping in front of one of the cylinders, placing a hand on its cool surface. The boy in the tube could not have been more than 12 or 13, but every one of his organs were atrophying like he had lived a lifetime of hardship. "He'll die if we don't get him out soon." Elbowing him aside, Reverend Carmichael accessed the control panel, his fingers dancing across the screen of the tube Bobby had indicated. "Everything seems normal here," he began, his voice raising an octave as Michael came to stand behind him, crossing his arms. "Everything is under control." He worked in silence for a minute, his tongue sticking out the corner of his mouth. Carmichael cursed as the screen began to flash red, a deep klaxon sounding over and over. "What's going on?" Michael demanded, his deep voice making the Reverend flinch. The greasy-haired man looked back at them, giving them a nervous, yellow-toothed grin. "I don't know, sir. Bobby was right. The child is not responding well to the changes, but it's still nowhere close to the end of the cycle. It will most likely die before—" "Then open it!" shouted Bobby. Carmichael's head bobbed up and down as he hurried to open the chamber, his fingers a blur as he inputted the sequence to wake the child. The doors slid open with a low hum, and a viscous blue liquid that the boy had been immersed in spilled onto the floor, vanishing into a drainage system he couldn't see. Bobby let out a sigh of relief. The boy appeared healthy, his skin tart, coloured a rosy pink, his chest rising and falling with a normal rhythm. Then, within moments, the nightmare began. The subject's skin blanched to an ugly shade of grey, the smooth, unblemished vigour of youth suddenly wrinkled, sagging, looking like he had aged 100 years in a matter of minutes before their eyes. Not knowing what to do, Bobby reached into himself desperately, fumbling to grasp the burning anger that was the seat of his powers. Fighting to control his fear, he gripped his rage tightly, clinging on for dear life, bringing the anger to heal. Bobby winced in pain as he channeled the stolen power that was in him. All those lives he had taken, cut short. Like he did with Carter not so long ago, he poured the energy through a funnel of his anger, sending a deluge of power into the rapidly decaying human shell in front of him. "What the hell are you doing, Robert?" said Michael behind him, sounding as though he were far away. He ignored him, not caring about the consequences, only wanting to save the boy. Bobby opened his eyes to find colour returning to the subject's skin. His eyes blinking open, it only lasted a heartbeat. Bobby found himself pouring life into a dark pit with no end. Scanning the subject, his thoughts went back to Carter, how he had found something in the man, a force to nurture and grow. Here there was nothing, and no amount of stolen life would save this dead thing in front of him. With a grunt, Bobby fell to his knees, drenched in sweat and breathing like he had just run a marathon, his joints sore and his skin too tight over his bones. "What did you do, Bobby?" Michael asked, offering a hand to help him up. "I don't know, but I could feel him, down to his core. There's something missing. In all of them," said Bobby, waving at the rows of cylinders. "None of these subjects here are like you or me. The genetics may be there, but there is an element that's stopping the process from taking hold, from creating an ascended." Feeling weak, Bobby took Michael's offered hand. The instant he touched him, he gasped, sucking in a ragged breath as if a hammer had been pounded into his chest. A rush of information tore through his brain, like rats were crawling around his skull, biting and scratching. For the first time since that horrible night at Blackwood, he could sense Michael, and he cringed, trying to back away from what he found, only to find himself locked in a death grip with him. His strange ability to sense other people had never worked this way before. Most of the time he could tell who was behind a door, or feel others' aches and pains. He was not sure why, but in Michael he could delve deeper, know every molecule, every atom. More importantly, in that blissful moment, he found what he could not in the test subject. Deep in what could only be called a person's essence, he found a spark, the perch that allowed the ascension process to take hold. There was more. Nestled just below the dark man's high collar was the crystal Pastor Warren placed there, its tendrils burrowing into Michael's body like a parasite, pulsating like a growing infection. Bobby reached out to grasp it with his mind, probing it to know what it was, only to be pushed away, forced back. Blinking away the illusion, he found himself panting hard on the cool floor, Michael standing over him with murder in his eyes. Without a word, a sword made of blazing energy appeared in his hand, one of his many creations. "Wait!" screamed Bobby as Michael raised the blade to strike. "I understand what's missing. I can see it clearly now," he said, shuffling back. Michael surged forward, his arm shaking as he went to shove the glowing blade in Bobby's face. "You just crossed the line, Robert. There's no coming back." Bobby raised a hand in front of him, still shaking. "I know what's been missing, why all these subjects die. We can make more, many more, if we can find the right people," said Bobby. "But if you kill me now, it's all over. You'll just be gambling, praying to get lucky. You need me now more than ever." Bobby drew a sigh of relief as the sword in Michael's hand vanished like it had never existed, his smouldering anger replaced by a quizzical look on his handsome face. "Talk quickly. Your life depends on it,"